Hi, Ginger.
Hi, Samantha. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
It's been a whirlwind of a year. I don't know when this publishes, but it feels like a year coming to a close. And yeah, it's been a busy time.
Yeah. Where are you coming from? Where are you based right now?
I live in Vermont, and I plan to be based there for a long time. I've tried leaving Vermont, but I just regret it, and I come back. So I'm in Vermont.
Is that where you're from originally?
I grew up in New Hampshire,
Okay.
which to a lot of people they probably think is the same place, but there are some differences.
I was gonna say I haven't been to either. I would love to go though. I mean, I've heard amazing things about both.
Yeah, it's like a mini version of where you live,
Yeah.
basically,
Yeah.
and with worse weather.
Yeah. So what do you do for fun? When you're not thinking about diabetes, what do you do for fun?
Well, I mean, of course, even when you're trying to have fun, you still have to think about diabetes, unfortunately. Um, I have two little kids. I have a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old, two girls. And so we run around a lot. And right now, exercising outside is not so great. It's too cold for me. But I love hitting up Planet Fitness for my daily cardio and a little bit of weights. And I've got this like corner in our mud room where I can jump rope. And as long as I don't go, more than 1 inch to the left and 1 inch to the right, I don't hit anything. And I have two dogs I walk every day, and an awesome husband who is rebuilding the fence in the backyard right now. I'm a homebody, if you couldn't
Yeah.
tell.
I love it. That's great.
Yes.
So tell us about your type 1 diabetes diagnosis.
Oh man. So I diagnosed myself actually, and no one believed me for like a week. I was in the seventh grade, and every year the seventh grade puts on a science fair. And one of my classmates was doing his project on diabetes, not a type, just diabetes in general, because who would have thought there were types, right? In the seventh grade. And this is 1999. My project was on milk, why you should drink milk. And oddly enough, I don't ever drink milk anymore. but and I saw the signs, the symptoms on his poster, and it was like, I think I have all of those. My whole family had had the flu about 3 weeks before, and it was like my flu never went away. And now we know, thanks to a lot of science from TrialNet and JDRF, that the flu could have been kind of a trigger for the full onset of the disease. But I had probably been developing type 1 diabetes since I was even before 5 years old, even though I was 13 when symptoms hit. That's a whole different topic we can talk about later if you want. But yeah, and I've lost 10 pounds in like 2 weeks. My vision was blurry, but oh, she's a teenager. She just needs glasses. Then I burst into tears. Oh no, before bursting into tears, I told my mom, I think I have diabetes because of my classmate's poster. And she said, no, no, only old people get that. And a week later, I did burst into tears because I felt so lousy. My blood sugar was like 600. It was an obvious diagnosis, fortunately, after that.
That's awful. Okay, so seventh grade. How old were you?
I was 13 and I am 38 today. So it's been about 25 years.
Wow. Wow. That's unfortunate. So is there anyone in your family that has type 1?
No, I like to think that it was a combination of several women in my family have hypothyroidism, autoimmune hypothyroid. And then my mom was 41 when she had me and my twin brother. So we were premature by like a month and a half. And my mom is a baby machine. So we came out very healthy. We didn't need any like medical support. We
Uh-huh.
were like each 6 pounds something, which is, I guess, heavy for twins who were born a month and a half early. But I like to say that my brother soaked up all the vital nutrients and I have type 1.
It's all his fault.
Yeah, this is a scientific theory I have put together.
Oh my goodness. That's so crazy. And so no one still has type 1 in your family. Like you're still the only.
No, right. Nope.
I would say I've heard stories like that too, where they are the only one for a little bit and then their sibling will get it later on and things like that.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Or, I mean, I get to interview, I don't know if anyone, if you know Lauren Bongiorno.
Hmm.
She's the CEO of Risley Health, which is a diabetes coaching company. And her father was just diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at 64 years old. So she used to think she was the only one in the family.
Hmm.
And in fact, you know, her father has type 1. It's just crazy, you know, and he was misdiagnosed for many years as type 2 just simply because of his age, even though he's super fit and didn't fit the profile of type 2 diabetes. So,
I was gonna
yeah.
say, what's going on with that too? I keep hearing older people getting diagnosed, people in their
So
60s.
more than 50% of people, of new cases of people with type 1 diabetes are diagnosed in adulthood, which is why anybody with a family member of type 1 should get screened for the autoantibodies of type 1 diabetes. And for anybody who's not familiar with that, autoantibodies are what your body basically produces when your immune system is attacking yourself. So it's different than the symptoms. And these autoantibodies show up long before symptoms. So they think most people have autoantibodies present before they're even 5 years old, even if you don't develop symptoms until 13. So the disease started developing a long time ago. Both my children have been screened at least twice, maybe 3 times. You don't need to keep screening them. I just did. I didn't want to miss it, you know. So yeah, I highly recommend going to TrialNet and learning about screening, and screen your parents, screen your cousins, screen your sister's kids, you know, get the
So
family screened.
is it just a blood test?
It's just a blood test. Yep.
Okay. And anyone can get it.
Anyone can get it, especially if you have family members.
Okay.
TrialNet, you need to have family members, and you can get this. I don't recommend TrialNet's at-home kit. It's just really complicated and not great. But they have this kit they send you that you then take to a Quest Labs. Like your urgent care probably works with Quest Labs.
Mm-hmm.
So and they'll help you figure this out. And you just take it in for an intravenous blood draw. It takes 2 seconds. I did have to bear hug a child to get this done, right? And then if you go through, there's a couple other programs like Ask through the Barbara Davis Center. They have an at-home kit that they will send you at home, which is a finger prick.
Oh, wow.
There used to be another really good at-home one, but it's not available right now.
And then, so if it's positive, what does that mean? I mean, what do you do?
Yeah, what can you do? I know when I first learned about screening, I actually was like, well, I don't need to know because there's nothing I can do about it. And there are so many studies going on right now, and there is one FDA approved drug that can delay the full onset of the disease if you catch it in those earlier stages. But then there's also all these other studies with different types of therapies that are trying to catch T1D in the earliest stages and then delay the full onset, which means delay the need for insulin. And, you know, if my 6-year-old were to test positive and I could delay her needing insulin, daily insulin therapy for even 3 years, that would be a blessing, right? But they haven't, like, we don't even know the full potential of all these different therapies. They've FDA approved one for this one-time treatment that can delay it on an average of 3 years. But now they're studying it for, well, what happens if you give it again next year? Does it continue to delay it? So you got to be open-minded and realize how much there still isn't known. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like but there's so much potential. So getting screened is worth it.
So, because you also have celiac, correct?
Yes.
Is this the same antibody test as celiac disease? Do you know?
No, every disease has its own antibodies.
Okay.
So you have to test for specific antibodies related to specific diseases. When you're testing for Hashimoto's, you're looking for specific Hashimoto's related antibodies.
Okay.
T1D has its own set they look for. Celiac is its own. So they're all different. And if your primary care doesn't, you know, that's the point of going to these screening sites. Because if you ask your primary care, they might not really know what to test you for.
Okay. When were you diagnosed with celiac?
The year after my type 1. So it was just routine testing because they test all the teenagers because a large percentage, you know, do have celiac. And I had no symptoms. So we actually ended up doing the next test, which is going down your throat while you're semi-conscious and scraping some tissue off your small intestines and then looking for the sign of celiac there. And I tested positive, and my family is very Italian. So we used to eat spaghetti like twice a week. And today there's awesome alternatives, but in the year 2000, there were not. So it was a bummer, but
gosh,
we survived.
So, which one do you think is harder?
So honestly, if I got to choose a cure, I would cure my fibromyalgia. I also have fibromyalgia that I think was triggered by competitive powerlifting. I got really strong really quickly in my early 20s, and I set a bunch of records. And then I started struggling with full body joint pain and chronic fatigue. And so the pain is way down. I've learned I let my body calm down. I stopped doing heavy weights. But if I do any new exercise, even though I can jump rope for 40 minutes straight, I haven't been jumping rope for the last month. I've been jogging. So if I were to go jump rope right now for 20 minutes, I will be exhausted at 4 p.m. to the point of like desperately needing to go lie down. And if I were to go like right now, I am extremely sensitive for some reason to lifting weights. And I was only doing, so I've had these different like fluctuations in what I can tolerate, but right, I was only doing one set because I knew I was really sensitive. One set of like, let's say 15-pound dumbbells and dumbbell chest presses. So 3 sets of like 15 reps. And then that's it, right? I was like jogging 3 miles and then doing that. And I would still end up exhausted at 4 p.m. So I'm kind of like afraid to lift weights right now. So if I could cure the fibromyalgia, I would, because I want to do so much more physically than I can. I've had to really learn how to cope with like not being able to push.
And that's a tough one because there's no cure. Like there's nothing you can do about that.
No, and all the treatment is basically go figure it out yourself. And I don't want to take yucky, like I did try to take Lyrica for a week and I thought I was being poisoned to death, that wasn't going to help anybody. So it's been a lot of self-study and rebuilding my body's tolerance for exercise. 3 years ago, I was not able to run 3 miles without exhaustion.
Oh my God.
So it's just been a lot of really patient rebuilding, letting my body calm down and then rebuilding my tolerance for exercise, but I still have to be really careful.
Ugh, that's terrible. I'm sorry.
There are worse things, absolutely. But if I could cure anything right now, it would be the fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue for sure.
Well, that's a good positive mindset that you have there.
Yeah.
I'm like some days with type 1, I'm like, this is terrible, this is awful. And so yeah, I always
Type 1 is a pain, yeah. But you can do anything technically, right? You have to work really hard to do it. But like I literally, if I want to feel great during the day, there are so many things I cannot do with fibromyalgia, and there is no alternative.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
So how do you manage your type 1? How do you use a pump?
I don't use a pump anymore. I just don't love some of the details that come with pumping. So I take 1 injection a day of Lantus. I use inhaled insulin as much as possible. And then when I say as much as possible, there are just certain situations that call for Novolog or Humalog, but I currently use Novolog. So I take like teensy, like using a syringe, I draw out like a half unit of Novolog in the morning for any dawn phenomenon. And then I generally practice intermittent fasting. So I tend to see my blood sugar go up again around like 9 a.m. So then I take another teensy dose of Novolog. And then if I eat I was still finishing Thanksgiving leftovers, mashed potatoes. I ate a huge bowl of mashed potatoes the other day. So for something like that, I would take Novolog and Afrezza in the inhaled insulin to kind of power approach the dense carbs, right? But I use inhaled insulin as much as possible. And I take Metformin and Ozempic. I take a teeny dose of Ozempic, and the benefits have been awesome.
Okay, great. I'm like, there's so much I want to dive into here.
I know. Yeah, sorry. It's a whole can of worms.
So first, so Afrezza, the inhaled insulin. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Because you're actually the first person I've ever interviewed that.
Oh, yeah, I have it right here, actually. This is I got like a pencil case to hold my Afrezza because it does take up quite a bit of space. You get these cartridges. And the inhaler is this teeny little thing. And there's nothing electrical about it. It is just a mechanical little container. And I'm just going to put in an empty cartridge to show you. So this goes in like that. And then you just close it. Click. And that's a dose.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when you
it's really easy.
What does that
Yeah,
mean?
so that's the trickiest part, right? So it comes in 4-unit, 8-unit, and 12-unit cartridges. And that really freaks out people with type 1 diabetes. But the thing you have to immediately realize in order to even give it a chance is that it is not the same as 4 units of Novolog, 8 units of Novolog. It's nothing like that, because the way it works is so different. It's like a completely different game. And it's actually kind of refreshing if you've been living with type 1 a long time and you're like, this is how insulin works. And it's so tedious in many ways, right? Because it's slow, it stays in your system forever. And if you get even just a little bit too much, you're suffering basically for the next hour until it works its way more out of your system. Afrezza is fast. It's out of your system really fast. And if you get a little too much, it's out of your system so fast that it's not this big dramatic thing for an hour waiting to stop being low and having to eat tons of carbs. So I think of it more as small, medium, and large doses. And I don't even have a prescription for the 12s. If I need more than 8, which I often would, like today I had a salad that had a lot of veggies on it and ranch dressing. So no like really obvious carbs, but still plenty of fat and mild carbs, if you will, low impact carbs. And I took an 8 for that. I might normally take a 4, but I had so much broccoli on there and carrots. I knew it was going to amp up the carb content a bit. And then about an hour later, I took another 4 because the biggest impact from Afrezza with the 4 is really within an hour. And then the 8 is about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, up to 2 hours that you could see it still impacting your blood sugar. But it's pretty much, you don't have to worry about it after 90 minutes to 2 hours. But if your meal is still digesting, you need a little more insulin. So I know that, right? I've experienced dosing for my salads. And so I just know time to take another 4 to get the tail end of the digestion of this salad. The other cool thing though is that it starts acting on your blood sugar crazy fast. So in what they study in their labs, it's like 2.5 minutes. What you can see on your CGM is like within 15 minutes, it's changing the direction of your blood sugar.
Wow.
Like visibly.
Amazing.
So it is, because if you underdose, it's not as big a deal because you can just see on your CGM, like, all right, I was being careful, I underdosed. I'm going to take another 8 and knock this down.
I was going to say for corrective boluses, that's amazing.
Yeah. It's just, you don't feel the need to rage bolus because you know you can turn it around more quickly. And it just gives you more flexibility and more forgiveness if you underdose or overdose.
So if you're someone who doesn't take that much insulin, though, it's probably not a good option.
Extremely sensitive to insulin.
Really? Okay.
I mean, I'm 5'2" and 120 pounds, and I run 3 miles every day. I don't need a lot of it. I take 10 units of Lantus a day, so that's my basal dose. If that's helpful for anybody to kind of judge. When you first start Afrezza, you are more sensitive to it than you will like the first couple months. Most people, there's a great Facebook group for inhaled insulin that I learned a lot from just kind of watching people's posts, but it's very common to need more. So when I first started it, I hardly used the 8s because I was so sensitive to the 4s. And but within a couple months, it was like, okay, I can start using these more freely. And I use just as many 8s as the 4s. But like 1 unit of Novolog can drop my blood sugar anywhere from 70 to 100 points. So I am very sensitive to insulin. You just have to kind of get past that. I used to make, some people take their 4s and they hack them. They open them up, split them up, and use empty cartridges and make 2s. And I did do that quite a bit when I first started using Afrezza. And now I just don't find the need for it. It is a tedious thing to have to do. So I will, if I want to take a teeny dose, I would take a teeny dose of Novolog rather than I don't hack any 2s anymore. But yeah, it's just weird. You have to go into it with like a totally open mind of like a totally new way of managing your blood sugar with insulin because it is so different. It's also really great for exercising because you don't have all this insulin on board all the time.
Right. Because that can be challenging.
Right? Yeah. If you go to gingervieira.com/diabetes, I have a whole section on there about inhaled insulin. And there's articles on there on how to get a prescription. It's this whole different process. Your doctor can't just send it to your pharmacy because you have to get prior authorization. You need to say, I have syringe burnout, needle fatigue. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you have to kind of work it a bit, right? Why should anyone have to say, I'm tired of taking injections? Could I please do some inhaling for a bit? Like that's
Yeah.
ridiculous. But yeah,
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, I'm like, maybe I'll look into that. It does scare me a little
it's,
bit, but
I know.
I don't take that much, so it makes me a little nervous, but it's probably worth it.
It honestly, it scared me because I tried a little sample from a friend before I had my own prescription, and I just used it wrong. So I ended up going really low because I was overlapping it with Novolog because I was basically rage bolusing,
Yeah.
and I was like, oh, I'll use Afrezza on top of this, and right, and so I had a really bad low. But by really bad, I just mean really sweaty. It's not like I treated with glucagon, but then I was like, I don't like it. And then the reason I ended up giving it a second chance is because I was hired to write a bunch of articles about it. And I was interviewing fellow T1Ds about using it. And I was like, all right, this sounds pretty great. I really should give it another chance and go about it with more knowledge on how to dose it, and when to take it.
Is it typically more expensive?
I think my copay, I'm really bad at retaining numbers that aren't blood sugar levels, but I think my copay is 35 a month.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
And then if you can't get insurance coverage, the patient assistance program they offer right now is $99 a month for as much Afrezza as you need, that could be a lot for someone's budget, but it also, if I lost the ability to get it from my insurance, I'd pay 99 a heartbeat because I cannot go back to depending on Novolog only. But just the freedom I get with Afrezza, and like you just don't have as much stress of like all this insulin on board, and I would be heartbroken if it was taken from me.
Yes. And so you have to carry the cartridges with you. Like you can't put it in
Yes.
before you go to dinner, for example, and like not have to take all of that with you.
I do stuff, some of this. I don't carry this whole thing around when I leave the house.
Yeah.
I have a little zipper pack of a little bit that I put in my purse because I don't need this much for a meal, right? Like I would feel safe leaving the house with just this and a thing of fours. And I would know that's more than enough for a meal, right? So you can make it really compact. I know people who pop out all the cartridges and put them in like a alloyed mints. What are those mints that are crazy minty? Yeah. Altoids, thank you. Yeah, see, you know what I meant. And they put all the cartridges in there and they carry that around.
Okay. Oh, that's good idea.
And I mean, he's a dude. The person I know who does this is a dude, and he puts it in his pocket. I have women pants, and our pockets aren't meant to hold things, so I can't do that.
I always think about that for men too. I'm like, it's got to be harder. Like at least we have purses and things to put stuff in. I'm like, they don't carry anything usually, so it's
yeah. They do have those pockets though. So, lucky guys.
So let's switch gears to metformin and Ozempic. So
sure.
you're open to talking about it. What made you get on it?
So I started metformin maybe 2 years ago. And because all of a sudden this one summer, I was just having my Dawn phenomenon was getting more and more dramatic. And it wasn't, the Dawn phenomenon had been increasing. It wasn't just all of a sudden one summer, but my insulin needs also that summer just kept like bumping up. And so I'd raise my Lantus by 1 unit and then I'd gain a pound or two because it was like very annoying. And I exercise a lot. I eat really well. You know what I mean? Like it just was like, what the heck? And the Dawn phenomenon was really annoying because I wake up around 5:30, 6 a.m. And as soon as I wake up, I was spiking 100 points. And it didn't used to be that dramatic. And there was only so much I could do with Novolog to try to catch that. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so metformin is supposed to be taken with meals. But I take it, and I'm going to preface this with that I'm not a doctor, and I'm not your doctor, and this is not medical advice. But I take it all at once before bed. And what this does for me is it dramatically suppresses Dawn phenomenon. And things are a little stressful right now. So I'm seeing a rise in Dawn phenomenon again, teeny bit. Like I'm taking, again, a quarter unit. My stress level is a little higher than usual right now because of crazy work stuff. But months ago, I was really not needing any Novolog for Down phenomenon when I was waking up because of metformin and Ozempic, but mostly the metformin, because it's kicking in at like, the metformin is really kicking in like 4 a.m. So it's really tackling that. And I eat my most, because I fast, practice intermittent fasting, I eat more of my food in the later half of the day. So it also has significantly cut down on how much insulin I need for all my meals, but especially the meals I eat in the evening.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of mealtime insulin it cut down is really surprised me. And most people, though, not most, I'll say some people, don't tolerate metformin well because it gives them really bad diarrhea. I did not experience that. And I have a couple theories. One is, definitely make sure that you start at a low dose and you start with the extended release version, which most doctors should be prescribing at this point in the universe now. Like, we should know, everyone should know you need extended release metformin. Yeah. But I do think also, if you eat a diet full of really highly processed junk, you're going to have more diarrhea because metformin prevents a lot of the sugar you eat from being absorbed and digested. And that's part of how it decreases your insulin needs. So if you're eating a lot of really garbage sugar, you're going to have more that your body has to get rid of. Right.
Okay. Yeah.
So something to consider.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So what's like I mean, I know a little bit about it, but the issue with like, celebrities taking Ozempic and diabetics not getting access to it. I mean, do you know anything about that?
I think people are having less trouble getting Ozempic nowadays, but the issue with taking Ozempic just for quick weight loss is that as soon as you go off Ozempic, you're going to gain that weight back. And it's not just because of if you suddenly start eating more. It's because Ozempic tells your liver to produce, it does a few things. One thing is it tells your liver to produce less glucose, like in a very big message, right? Produce a lot less glucose, liver. So for us, people with type 1 are actually overproducing glucose because we do not properly produce a lot of hormones, not just insulin, but there's actually 5 other hormones that we don't produce well. And those hormones do things like tell our brain that we're full. Many type 1s talk about feeling constantly hungry. If you've had type 1 since you were a kid, you might not be aware of this, but people who are diagnosed as adults are really aware of it because they've had enough life being a normal human, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, why am I hungry all the time and I never feel full? And that's why, because you're not properly producing hormones that signal to your brain that you are full. We empty food from our gut into our bloodstream much more quickly because we're missing hormones that slow that down. So Ozempic compensates for that. It slows down how quickly you digest and empty food in your bloodstream, which helps with post-meal blood sugar spikes. Ozempic tells your brain you're full sooner and calms down that constant wanting food and increases your insulin sensitivity, tells your liver to stop producing so much glucose and other things like that. So if you're not diabetic or you don't have obesity and struggling, with managing your weight, going on Ozempic for quick weight loss is foolish, and also people are abusing the dosing. So they go on these big doses because they love the results. And then when they go off it, so they're really sick during it and not eating, and then going off of it and going nuts. And then their body's also rebounding because it was rapid weight loss from not eating. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's not that Ozempic is evil, but it's people abusing it. I take 0.25 milligrams. Okay. Most people, if I was being dosed the way healthcare would dose me, I'd be on like 1.5 maybe, just for being an adult with type 1. But I found that when I go up past 0.25, I just feel sick. And at 0.25, I don't feel sick. And instead, I get all the little benefits in this nice little quiet way that help my body compensate for those 5 other hormones I'm not producing well.
So why aren't they giving this to every type 1? Or why aren't they recommending it for every type 1?
They, I've talked to a couple people that have experience with the whole FDA world, and there are some people really advocating and trying to put together studies to show how beneficial it is. But the reason it's not worth it to Novo Nordisk to do that is probably because we're a small population and they're not going to make a lot of money from it. So they don't care. But I think, I mean, it is being prescribed to type 1s. You just need an endocrinologist who understands it and doesn't just dismiss it because they think it's a trend, right?
Yeah.
But I think in the next few years, it will be considered more standard of care for type 1 because it is hugely helpful, even in the tiniest doses.
That's really good to know because I would even never consider.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not struggling with my weight, right? And I'm really the same weight now. I did lose like 8 pounds when I first started Ozempic because the first month it really made me honestly forget to eat much.
Oh, wow.
But then that calmed down, and then you lose weight too because your insulin needs drop, right? Like dramatically.
Yeah.
Which I feel like just levels the playing field for us because we are all taking more insulin than we would need if we weren't diabetic because we don't have all these other hormones helping us out, right? But I am today the same weight as before I started Ozempic, but it's a lot easier to manage that weight, if that makes sense. It's just, I feel like I'm playing a fair game in maintaining my weight.
That's amazing because I have noticed that I feel like since diagnosis, it's harder to like, I feel like I'm like, I'll gain 5 pounds. I'm like, what? Like, where did that come from?
Yeah. I mean, everything is working against you. And type 1s, like the obesity rates in type 1 diabetes are going up and up and up. And part of it is because we are only being given one hormone when we're actually struggling to properly produce 6 hormones. And the one that we're given is the one that stores extra sugar as fat.
Of course.
Right.
Oh my gosh. That's okay. Well, I'm like, maybe I'll, I have a doctor's appointment later this week with my endocrinologist. I'm like, maybe I'll bring
There you go. Make sure to explain to her how much you have to work to keep your weight down and post-meal blood sugar spikes and, lay it out.
Yeah. I mean,
Rising insulin needs.
I avoid certain foods because I know for a fact it will spike my blood sugar. No matter how much insulin I take, it's going to spike my blood sugar. So does that help with those things?
I would really express quite clearly and dramatically all the different things so that she can document it and send it to your insurance.
Okay. Well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
So what do you think diabetes or type 1 diabetes will be like in 10 years?
Oh my gosh. So do you want to hear about Vertex VX264 stem cell therapy?
Yes, I do. I do. Yeah.
It's really exciting. And basically Vertex has done a ton of work to help I don't know if they're considering it a cure, but if you catch Crohn's disease in toddlerhood, they have a treatment they've developed to basically cure Crohn's disease.
Wow.
So they're dedicated to doing that with type 1. And right now they've already taken the stem cell therapy that Doug Melton spent decades developing. And it doesn't require organ donation. They have manufactured the process so it can all be generated in a lab, right? It started with one donated stem cell. And since then, now they know how to make their own. And right now there are like a half dozen recipients of VX880, which is the stem cells in conjunction with immunosuppression, which isn't ideal for the general public. But they needed to do that in order to see that the stem cells work. So they're putting these insulin producing cells in your body, and the body is taking them in and successfully producing insulin in these recipients to the point at which most of them no longer need any insulin. They are insulin independent.
And so that stays with them for the rest of their life? Like they
have to continue the immunosuppression because otherwise their immune system would attack those stem cells. So VX264 is the next phase that they're, hopefully going to be recruiting for next year, next phase of the study. And that doesn't have immunosuppression. Instead, it has this device that protects the stem cells from your immune system while still letting your bloodstream kind of run through and pick up the insulin. So T1D in 10 years, I mean, if you just look at 10 years ago, T1D, like people who are diagnosed nowadays have no idea what it was like. When I was pregnant, I pricked my finger like 15 times a day. Do you know what I mean? And I did have a CGM, but you still prick your finger 15 times a day because the CGMs weren't as good.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's going to be wildly different. And I think within my lifetime and your lifetime, something like the X264 is going to totally change our lives.
Wow. Okay.
Because there are others, Vertex is making headlines right now because they're furthest along, but there are a lot of other research studies in the process that are trying to do the same thing. And the reason this is happening now is because it takes, everybody loves to say, where's the cure? They're hiding it from us. It is a really complicated disease, and it has taken a really long time for them to figure out how to get around the immune system. Nobody knows how to tell your immune system to then knock it off.
It's even like, I wouldn't even care about taking insulin. It's more like everything else that comes with it is the pain. Like, if I just had to take insulin a couple times a day, I would be fine. And like, if I didn't have anything else to worry about, it's the other stuff. That's
right. Yeah. It's the side effects of the insulin, which is basically feeling like at any moment you might die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Literally.
It's like going for a dog walk could put you in the hospital if you don't know what you're doing.
I just was able to not think about diabetes for a few hours every day, that would be great.
Yeah. And I think that's what the general population doesn't know about type 1, because they see the pumps and the CGMs and, it does all that for you. That's so cool. And that constant worry and keeping yourself alive. People would think we are being dramatic, but it is an hour by hour game of trying to stay alive.
It is. Yeah. I mean, it's true. Even my friends were like, oh, just take the insulin, like for whatever food. I'm like, it doesn't work that way, but okay.
Yeah, no, right. When I've said like, no, I don't eat that type of thing in the middle of the day because it just ruins the rest of my day. And they're like, what do you mean? Because they know I'll eat dessert at 8 p.m. But like, I'm not putting this giant variable into the middle of my like brunch. No, thank you. I'm not going to go eat pancakes at 11.
You know what, though? That's interesting you just said that, because I like to eat my carbs at lunch because I know if I start to go up, I can go for like a walk around the block and we'll bring it back down.
Oh, how funny.
I'll be sleeping and then I get mad if it goes up because I don't know.
So yeah, we've each developed what we can cope with, right? And how it works for us though. But it's the same dilemma we're describing at a different type of day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do you have any last minute tips for our listeners?
Find this on Amazon. It's $9.99. And if you want to learn how to exercise safely with type 1, it's only 100 pages because I know you don't want to sit there and read a 300-page book. Neither do I. So I put the core essentials of learning how to exercise safely because I love exercising. And I know so many people who are terrified of exercising with type 1, and I don't want you to be terrified because it is doable once you learn the right facts.
Yes. And I loved your recent post about being able to exercise without
eating. Fasted exercise. Yeah. I mean, I can tell you, I run 3 miles. So first I walk my dog 2 miles, then I run 3 miles, and I do not eat until like noon.
Yeah.
So
I'm the same way. I do all my workouts in the morning without taking any insulin, and I never drop. It's only if I, of course, work out after I take it, I'll drop. But
yeah, which is why I don't like eating pancakes at 11, because I like to walk my dog again later, and I don't want to have to eat candy just to walk my dog. So yes, that's in there.
Yes. I know we didn't even get to your books. We're going to have to do a round 2 interview.
Yes, anytime, Sam.
Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.